Syrian civil war. And I chose this topic because when I was taking a class at the college I previously attended, it was brought to my attention. I really didn't know that much about it. And then once I had chose to do a research paper on it, I dove more in depth and found out a lot of information that was actually shocking because I didn't hear a lot about it, and I felt that was something that should have been in the news. So a little bit on how it started. Hafez al-Assad, which is the father of the current president of Syria, took over the government in 1970, and he overthrew the current president and imprisoned a lot of more political leaders. And since then, he's had a tyrannical rule, and they've been very oppressive to the lower class, so to say, of citizens that work there. So fast forward a little bit to March of 2011. By now, a lot of the citizens are discontent, and they're very mad with the rule that the al-Assad family has had over Syria for this time. And so there's been peaceful protests everywhere, and in March of 2011, there was a pro-democracy protest after students were imprisoned and tortured after writing revolutionary slogans on a wall at school. So that's obviously not something that you should do, but they were wrongly treated for their actions. And the government sends in security forces to try and control the crowd, and they open fire on protesters, killing multiple protesters, which further escalates the anger of the people who've been oppressed for this long, and they take up arms in revolt. So fast forward a few more months, 4 months later in July, hundreds of thousands of citizens and rebel forces are up in arms against the government security forces, which have been trying to control the unrest. And rebel brigades are being formed to combat the government forces, and by this time it's just exploded into an all-out civil war. And then by June of 2013, the fighting had escalated. There were 90,000 dead from the start of the civil war, which CNN says was the March of 2011 incident. And then by the end of August of 2015, there was an estimated 25,000 dead, 250,000, excuse me. So the rest of this speech, I'm going to talk about all the crimes and consequences into the Civil War. So war crimes that have been committed, and a UN Commission of Inquiry states that evidence says that all parties involved in this conflict have committed war crimes, including murder, torture, rape, and enforced disappearances. They have also been accused of using civilian suffering, such as blocking access to food, water, and health services through sieges as a method of war. So the government has corruptly used these methods, such as restricting citizens from having access to health care, food, and other basic means of life to try and control them or combat their civil unrest. Chemical weapons. It is a war crime to use chemical weapons, and there's been multiple reports of chemical weapons used on not only rebel forces, but the government has been blamed on using them on citizens, which is also a war crime in itself. And the humanitarian crisis, which is what surprised me the most about this, more than 4.5 million have fled Syria from the start of the conflict, and they have fled to neighboring countries, Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey, who have struggled to cope with one of the largest refugee exoduses in history. And about 10% of Syrian refugees have sought safety in Europe, and those countries are struggling to cope with the burdens of all these incoming refugees. And then, according to CNN, more than 4.5 million people have fled Syria since the start of the conflict, most of them women and children. A further 6.5 million have been internally displaced, so removed from their homes, but because they have nowhere else to go or they can't leave the country, they're stuck in Syria but displaced from their homes. And in 2015 alone, according to the UN database, 1.2 million returned from their homes. And then some shocking facts. The estimated death toll is about 470,000 and counting. There's been hundreds of public executions and amputations, thousands of civilians are dead as a result of government bombing. Like I said, 5 million refugees have fled. 6.5 million have been displaced. 2015 alone, 1.2 million were driven from their homes. And this last one, which I thought was pretty interesting, was the UN was talking